All right, I just got off that live with my brother Dorian Yates. I don't know if you guys were on that. That was fucking powerful, of course. And I'm about to go live with my bro Illuminati Congo. So that last live was part of the self mastery project that I did with that we've created with Novak, and it's just been going fantastic. People are getting a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, and we're all at home right now. So what a perfect time to absorb and get as much information and speak from the heart. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was it's raw. That's what you get here. You get raw information, the real deal. Illuminati Congo.
Peace, peace, brethren.
Hey, what's up, my man? How are you?
I'm chill. How are you?
Dude, living the dream, man. Wide open.
Man,
Eyes wide open.
no doubt. I see. I was watching the last live you was doing. Y'all had me feeling like I had to do 100 more push-ups today, man.
Right? Yeah. We get my curls in. Let's get my triceps in. That's Dorian Yates, man. It's crazy. It's like I used to look at magazines of like his story. I was a kid. I was probably like 12, 13 years old. I mean, he's a legend. And then a year and a half ago, he reaches out to connect with me. It's just like, okay. And then I took him, he came to my spot in Laguna Beach. And then from there, we went on a hike. We talked about life and plant medicines. And it was just, I'm used to that now. Like people that were legends when I was a kid are now like wanting to understand the inner parts of life and our soul's purpose. So it's an honor.
How did you get so well versed in the details of these things that you seem so expert in from my view?
Great question. I think number one, it's my bloodline. I really, and I don't mean it like in a superiority way. I mean, like, I know where I come from. I mean, my heritage, my ancestors. Yeah. I know where I come from, and every waking second of my life, I'm in full reverence of my family and my blood. And I want to learn and experience more of my culture every moment. And so that has given me an embodiment. And then through there, I was just always good with complex, equational, algorithmic concepts. And I was always a public speaker. I was a public speaker since I was a little kid. And I was, I was encouraged by my family to be into everything. So I was a surfer, I was a basketball player, I was a baseball player, I was the top guy on our chess team at La Jolla High School. I was into the sciences. I would go to extracurricular activities, summer sessions called Gateways, where I learned about marine biology and rocketry and fencing. And, I was just constantly like doing, and then I was culturized. I was also put around many cultures. I traveled a lot as a child. And then I was mentored by David Avocado Wolf, starting around age 10. It's just all of these cultivations. And I also have this limitless mentality that we can achieve and experience anything that we really put our heart and mind to. And I have strong discipline. I have strong discipline. So.
Yeah, I know I sent you a question that one of my friends was asking me about related to his healing. And you did a very detailed response for that, and it definitely inspired him. He seems like he's excited to take on the healing journey with more tools now.
H. pylori. H. pylori.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad I'm glad I did that. I mean, that inspired me to do that. And I took time, I took a breath, I reflected on it, I looked at a few of my notes, I followed up on a few things. I actually called gastrointestinal doctor that I know. I would exchange notes, you know, because for me, it's like I have to find that balance, and I put it out there. And the intention is that spark through you communicating with me, through him communicating through you, has created
Right.
a web, and I'm about thousands and thousands of people are taking that information now and applying it to their lives and their children's lives. Just think about once we start doing this with millions, and that's happening right now with this self-mastery project. And if you're just joining us right now, this is a self-mastery project. Everything is a self-mastery project. And this is my brother, Illuminati Congo, who's a divine musician, divine brother, connected to spirit, very, very integrated in his intelligence and his awareness through his love, through his mind, through his connection to source, his connection to you know, different informations, and being completely open in your design. And that's why we're connected. So if you're just joining us, we just, you know, I think for us, we don't really have anything planned out. It's just raw, and that's the best way to do it. And so I'm stoked.
Sure. I know after when we settled on today being the day to do our live, I noticed it was 5/5, and that's a very significant day in the Rasta community, because it's the day that Haile Selassie left Ethiopia because Parliament voted so of Ethiopia to go before the League of Nations, which was the predecessor of the United Nations, to speak and plead the case of Ethiopia. And
Wow.
5 years later, exactly 5 years later, on May 5th, on 5/5, is when he returned to Ethiopia after. Now, initially, he did fight on the front line, even for two nights straight without even taking a break. So not like our current day leaders who won't go out to battle for the people with the troops. He actually did, but it was the vote of Parliament for him to leave. So on 5/5, he
What
left.
year? What year?
1936.
1936.
And then 5 years later, on 1941, 4 plus 1 is 5.
Yeah.
He returned on May 5th. And so if you look at his name, Haile Selassie, that's 5 syllables. Jah Rastafari, that's 5 syllables. You look at Lion of Judah, that's 5 syllables. You could go into the 5 related to Haile Selassie a lot. He was 5 foot, 5 feet tall in the physical structure. And all of these things are wonderful synchronicities. And so we take even the word synchronicity sounds like the day that people celebrate today. Synchronicity.
De Mayo.
Yeah, synchronicity de Mayo. So we take this cinco, and we ask ourselves, how does it relate to our lives? And of course, you know, we see the Vitruvian man, which is the standing with arm, leg, arm, head, or Allah, the 5. You know, that's a fractal. Even in the word 5, you have phi, PHI. And if you look at a 5-point star, you can find the phi fractalized within that. And it goes even deeper. We'll go to what's it called, the pentagram, or the pentagon, which was something I wanted to speak up with you about a little towards the end of this, about
Sure.
about the devil and Lucifer and things of that nature. But related to that, you have pent in the serpent, in serpent is in that name, and then you have repent. Which is to make a 180-degree turn.
right.
Now, if you take a 5-point star and face the point up, inside you have it facing downward. The fractal of the pentagon on the inside is facing downward. And if you turn it around, you'll always have one part facing up and one part facing downward, because here's a good example. So the point is up, even though it's in the center. And if you flipped it, this point would be up. And so when we're talking about repentance, and then that 180-degree turn, you can see that which any way you turn that 5-point star, that you can find the proper alignment. There's never a time that it's upside down. When is a starfish upside down? Only when it's flipped over.
When it's inverted, when it's inverted.
Right.
So what, what he's speaking on, if you're not grasping, is you basically, our language and our intention all stems from geometries, and it stems from angles and numbers. There's so much encoding going on, and we're completely separated from that today. We've completely lost the meanings of all of these things, and they're so easy. Once you lose meaning of it, they can easily be turned against you and demonized against you and used against you. And that's what the term occult pretty much, that's the whole thing, right? It's hidden information. And so, but if you can understand that, like, for example, this crystal right here, right? I have hundreds of thousands of crystals all over my sanctuary, but I don't have them because I just like to feel like, oh, the energy from it. No. It's the geometry and understanding the structure and understanding the alchemy of this.
The minerals.
The minerals is how my body absorbs it through that gnosis. And I think that's what you're speaking on, of how powerful these synchronicities are. And when you start falling into that, that's when you hit hyper synchronicities. And ultimately, what are we trying to achieve here? What's our goal here? Is to live the best life of all time, and have the most production, and have the most intention, and to make everybody else around us better, right? And so that's what he did, right? That's who the soul that you're talking about, Rastafari. That's what he did. He enveloped and invoked those magics, and that's why he was able to do what he did.
For sure. And even with Yeshua, you have Yahweh. That's the 4-letter name. But then what is inserted right there in the middle of Yad He Vav He? You have Sin or Shin. That's inserted right in the middle. That's the 5 letters. And what did they say that Yeshua or Jesus took on? He took on the sin of the world. And so Yeshua is supposed to mean Yah, or God saves. And that Shin, which is a trident, if you look at the Hebrew letter for Shin or sin, it's a trident. So he takes this on right in the middle of the name Yahweh, to change the magic working from tetragrammaton to pentagrammaton. So now we use the five elements instead of just the 4 elements of fire, earth, water, and air. We also use the space or the spirit in this understanding.
What do you feel as you start to unlock the codes and cipher the codes and get more into the gematria of all of this. You know, a good friend of mine, Marty Leeds, I've done multiple lectures with him. I go back with Marty like maybe 6 years from Lightning in the Bottle, and we were on stage together, and then from there we developed a friendship. And I have a couple of his books, and I've watched all his YouTube videos, and so
I have a major synchronicity with him. I've never met him or talked to him, but I have a major synchronicity.
Oh, cool. Yes, of course. Yeah, right. So do you feel, so Marty really approaches it from an analytical left brain, and he's starting to, I've noticed that over time he's starting to tie it into his spirit. And so where do you find yourself with this information and this knowledge? Where does it take you? I know where it takes me, but where does it take you?
Well, it empowers me in knowing my ability and the ability of others, knowing that this is a blank canvas here that we are experiencing, and that we are the illustrators or the illusionists to know ourselves as illusionists. When all the synchronicities don't make me think that there's some type of someone like, oh, this is how we set it up. This is connected to this, and this is connected to this, and you got to find it out. I don't think there's some person behind the scenes who's doing it. We're the giver of meaning. We are the conspirators, and the more connections that are made, the more I feel my brain making connections, and these connections set up to build like a magical net or a magical like a Merkaba that we can, that's empowered by this gnosis that you're speaking of. When these synchronicities in our gnosis appear, that's why I wrote a book called Synchronistic Phonetomology, because it's connecting synchronicity and gnosis. Synchronistic, when the synchronicities appear, that is the gnosis. But to know our gnosis as our own creation, as our own meaning, we're finding what works for us to build whatever supports our true will and our purpose. So that's what I get from all the synchronicities. They make me excited, delighted, and confident in who I am and who we are as magicians.
Well said. I resonate completely. That's exactly why I do what I do. That's why I live everything that I do, because I'm not leaving anything. I'm living it. And I use it in my disciplinary practices to connect outside of the frontal consciousness. So it starts to become repetitious. You know, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And so the more that you start getting these linguistics, these inner gnosises, the more you can start seeing the synchronicities. And when you start seeing the synchronicities, you don't start just taking a glance at it and turning the cheek. You start really diving into what that means. Once you start doing that more, then you start getting into hypersynchronicities. Once you start getting into hypersynchronicities, then you're in the holy flow. When you're in the holy flow, then you have access to free will. When you have access to free will, then you can love unconditionally. You know, so it's like there's a geometry to this. And I've actually written my own coding. You know, and I've intertwined my human design, I've intertwined my gene keys, I've intertwined all of these things, and I've designed it to what works for me and what I believe in, right? Like literally, like I'm saturated in it to full embodiment. There's not a shred of doubt. And then I combine the science to that, the epigenetics with it, and it fits. It actually fits. There's no, totally. It's a total trinity. It's that divinity within the trinity, and it's the merging of both worlds. And that's what, that's what you're talking about as far as becoming a magician. Yeah, so magician is not some dark overlord. Magician is being able to react, to create your magic in your life and to manifest free will. And that's a question I always get. Chervin, how are you able to do this? How do you live like this? How do you do it? Well, this is how. I mean, what do you want? What do you want from me? You know, I intertwine all my lifestyle, my inner thoughts, my gnosis, my experience, and I look beyond the surface. It's so easy to just get a snapshot of something or to have someone tell me something and believe it. It doesn't work that way for me. I have to uncover it. I have to unravel it, and I have to see how it relates to me. Would you say you operate in the same methodology?
For sure, it's a methodology of what works. You know, Christ said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Well, there's nothing that can set you free if it doesn't work for you, and what works for me might not work for you. So the truth can only be what works for you.
Correct.
Anyone attempting to tell you the truth is telling you what works for them. And that is important when we're understanding ourselves as illusionists and this world as illusion. There's nothing wrong with illusion. There's nothing wrong with being an illusionist. But there is a detriment in not understanding this as an illusion. That is where the D comes in. That's where delusion comes in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well said. Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I think that's a good segue into the construct of our world and understanding the opposing forces that are in this reality and the awareness of them as opposed to the demonizing of it. You know, it's the demonizing that causes fear and causes lack of knowledge. And,
so what did the word demon originally mean?
Demon meant not the unknowing, right?
The demon, it definitely could mean that. The demon was also referred to as the genius, like this genius part in a person.
That's what it is. Okay, so it's the unknowing of self. Okay, that's where I was heading. Go ahead, keep going.
And that also you would have in some mythologies the daemon. The daemon was like this, like a totem almost. A person would have like some type of spirit animal that would be connected to them through their through their subconscious, called a daemon as well.
Which is another, it's another word magic that we've come across. You know, humans have put energies and casted spells on different things to create a whole thing. I mean, just think about it. The word demon, to 99% of the population, they think of a devil with red horns who's under the earth, and then they relate that to human nature. And that's casting spells 24/7.
For sure.
And that's dangerous. And that's another reason why we are where we are.
Even the word devil, you have the word Devi in there, which means goddess. And so the fact that that is something that is made to be wrong, a devil, and also as we're talking about spelling, and you read the reverse of the word devil, it is lived. And so what's the code that's being shared there, or the code that's being shared in evil and live? I don't know. That's up to you to find the meaning. And all of these words, you have Satan, which means the opposite or adversary, or resistance. But is there anything wrong with resistance? We require resistance for electricity. We require resistance for growing as a, like if you're Michael Jordan, you need someone like LeBron James to challenge you to get better. you need that type of resistance. And so, is there something wrong with a Satan? No. Even in the Bible, God has been called a Satan or an adversary against the Philistines, or
Yeah.
a specific group that God was against. And
Yeah.
so when we're talking about Satan or the devil, it's very it's people are very superstitious when they bring these things up, and it goes even back to the scapegoat. uh the goat that is uh where they used to take on all the sins of Israel, and they would slaughter this goat, and it was supposed to be the sacrifice to take on all the sins. And so the name scapegoat became the name to blame something else for our issues. And now, what's the main image of the devil?
It's the goat.
Yeah,
That poor scapegoat. Yeah. I mean, that was perfect right there. Resistance is what creates our reality. And that's the polarities of this world. We have to have implosion when we have explosion. I talk about that when it comes to water. I talk about that when it comes to plants. Correct. Inhale, exhale, all of those things. And none of them are right, none of them are wrong. It's just the construct that we live in. Another one is, understanding what Lucifer was and understanding the entity around Luciferic energy. And what does Lucifer mean? We've connotated it to some like slithering snake, when Lucifer, in fact, is the most beautiful being. It's the bearer of light. It's the offerer of faith. It's the offerer of higher levels of knowledge. And Lucifer comes in the most beautiful, magnificent colors and shapes and symmetry.
Meliktaus.
That's right. And for some of the philosophies that I resonate that work for me, and that's a Steiner brought concept from looking at ancient Persian culture, ancient Hindu cultures, and also understanding biblical aspects of two opposing forces in this world. And those two forces are the Luciferic impulse and the Ahrimanic impulse. And what I find balance and resonance through those archetypes, because I see it and feel it and experience it within myself, and I see it outside of me. I have Ahrimanic energies and tendencies because I live in a mechanistic material world, and I have a scientific mind. I also have Luciferic energies inside of me because I believe in spirit, and I believe in God, and I believe in energies outside of my being. And I also know that both ends of those spectrums can get too radical and can get too extreme and take you off your center divinity. And so that's a very powerful geometry and impulse that guides me through this life. And I think that just having these discussions evokes a form of magic and a form of wisdom that comes out and brings out more gnosis and more thought.
For sure.
If we're not talking about it, I mean, what the hell else are we doing? You know what I mean? So it's like this is where I thrive in, and I'll be. Have you gone into that energy field of understanding Ahriman and understanding Lucifer?
Slightly from the Rudolf Steiner context. Slightly. It's not one of my main models that
Mm-hmm.
I operate from, but I have some friends who it's their main the main construct that they use to sort of the spectacles that they use. And
Right.
so I converse with them and have come to an understanding through their views.
What's your take on what we're doing here?
Well, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, what's your perspective in terms of, so I operate in a lens where I see this entire system as a construct. There's a technology at hand. For
Mhm.
example, the moon is alive in my perspective. The
Mhm.
moon is not some rock stuck in orbit, perpetually hiding its dark side and orbiting at fantastic speeds, hurtling through space. It's not something that we just plant a flag on. The moon is part of the technology of this reality and is a governing body to our entire biological field and biological system as carbon-based life forms. So that's part of the construct. Also, I see the earth, the mineral, the water, and the electromagnetism as part of the construct of who we are.
Mhm.
And also through those technologies, I see opposing forces in this reality, and that's the taking you outside of the human body into the hyper spiritual. And I also see the material spectrum coming in hard. Yeah, as you know, for the last thousands of years, we were in a hyper religious state. This world was governed on religious overtones. This whole world was governed on religion, which is a faith. And now the new religion is materialism. Science through, you know, the postmodern revolution from 1400 to late 1800 has basically brought individualism. Man started thinking outside of the box, started getting outside of the religious undertones and started looking deeper and deeper. And that's where you have a lot of the stuff that was going on with theosophy and Madame Blavatsky and understanding those things. And then from there, you have the sciences. And so now science has become the new religion, and we are being pushed into a scientific revolution. And it's not science that's backed up by the scientific method, it's backed up by corporations. And they want to force feed us a science that hasn't been proven. And that's coming in many forms when it comes to health, when it comes to who we are, where we are, why we are. And that age is considered by many to be the Ahrimanic influence, that we are saturated in materialism, that we were birthed out of a big bang, that we are evolved monkeys, that we are flesh and bone, that we go directly back into the dirt and that's it, that there is no internal soul, that if you can't smell it, touch it, feel it, measure it, and quantify it, it doesn't exist. And that's where we're in right now, and that's where you're seeing all these things happening with AI, artificial intelligence. You know, we're going into that transhumanism situation. And so for me, I see this as a very, very dangerous situation without putting fear to it. And so it's in order to snuff out the dark, whatever we want to call it, we have to know it's there, right? That's that's an original thought. It's an original statement. It goes back. So I find myself floating through the balance of that. I'm actually in the process of putting together a book on these concepts and taking old world knowledge and comparing it and relating it to a modern viewpoint in a modern world. So that's where I see that's where we're at. I see, we have a postmodern human that is so stuck into mankind's embodiment, and that's why you have so many people that have carnated here that have gone hyper spiritual, and they're completely outside of the box, outside of their mind, in the ego, in their spiritual perspective, ungrounded, with no solutions, and a lot of victim mentality. And so I honor both sides to bring harmony and balance to the middle.
Mm-hmm. Well, well, that's the word devil, devil, double. What am I saying? Devil, or am I saying double? Am I saying Diablo? Uh, it's those doubles are where the whole uh, where the issue exists. in believing in the in these doubles, in the devils, believing that these two things are two things rather than one thing.
Right.
And so, yes, they do have context where they appear as two things. They do have a relativity where they can operate and be labeled in illusion as two different things. But if we're not aware that it's always an illusion, whatever classification we're pointing out to, that Lucifer is an illusion, that the Ahriman is an illusion, that these are visualizations we've drawn up to explain a happening. And these visualizations they can serve us if they help us apply what works for us. But oftentimes the double makes people apply what doesn't work for them in some weird self-sabotaging cycle, and I see that
Extremes. Too extreme.
Yeah, those extremes, and those extremes come from two things in my perspective, from birth trauma and from the death urge. The birth trauma is all of the stuff that comes around being born, whether it's pain that the mother's feeling, it could be prenatal trauma as well, things that are happening while we're in the womb, the vaccines, the being separated from our loved ones in skin-to-skin contact upon being born, and the harsh conditions around almost all births ever. So that birth trauma, and then ensuing traumas that are built up around birth trauma, like school trauma, religious trauma, educational system trauma, all these things, but they're all wrapped up in one thing called birth trauma. Then the other last one is the death urge. This is the desire to get away from it all, the desire to end it all, the desire to the belief that death is inevitable, and that there's just someone out there who just made this as the way it has to be. Those two sides, the birth trauma and the death urge, and the two things that and all the stuff that's wrapped up in between that, are what leads people to fear and come into these groups with each other to manipulate and control, and forming what would be called.
Is it a form of psychosis? Are we talking about a form of psychosis where you're creating your own illusion? Yeah, exactly, dude.
And people start creating their own egregores, their own real living psychic entities that can control and do people's bidding, to do the bidding of people's negative limiting beliefs, or they could do beneficial things in egregore. But if you don't understand what an egregore is and how to work with that, your belief and the limitations that are wrapped up in these belief systems will cause this psychic entity to do mighty crazy things. And it's possible that COVID-19 is an egregore.
For sure. Okay, so let's rewind there. So you're speaking my language, like, fully. I mean, I don't know if you've been...
That's why we do this, brother.
That's why we do this. It's amazing. It feels so good, brother. I have to say that right now. Like, hand on my heart. It feels so good to have a brother that speaks and feels every nuance of your entire internal gnosis. meeting in that center point is harmony on all my cells, and it gives me comfort. You know, it's like, it really gives me comfort. That's part of neutralizing anything in my body that could be out of order or anything, is to know that I'm not alone. And that's human nature, right? That's what tribe is all about, right?
For sure.
And so if you're just joining us, what my brother has just said is, he first talked about birth trauma. And if you've watched any of my lives over the last 3-4 months, I've done probably 6 or 7 with beautiful mothers, and we went through their entire birthing process, from conception to holding to the entire process. And this is a subject that is heavy on my heart, that I've researched and studied and interviewed so many people across the world regarding this stuff. And it's come to my awareness that it's a deliberate attack on the carnating souls. It has to be. There's no other way that we could be in this influence or this impulse system of basically detaching the soul's carnate into the human existence body and removing the energies of the imprint of the mother and father onto the child by completely disregarding the entire holy sacrimony of the birthing process. And that starts from chemicals, that starts with pornography, that starts with the cosmic alchemy of lovemaking, to the toxins of, you know, all the stuff, the vaccines, the poisons, the water system, to the birthing process, to the entire structure, to the lighting. I mean, go on and on and on, to the ultrasounds, to the radiations. It's just incredible where we're at today when it comes to the birthing process. And then going into the children development process, which is why I'm such an advocate of Waldorf education, where you're basically creating an incubator for a child to thrive in, for them to ascertain their own spiritual practice at an early age while their brain is in theta waves, which is a very, very important time for a child to form their consciousness. Because the soul, in my belief system, the soul is still carnating into the body up until age 7. And so the soul is starting to materialize and take form. And so if we're robbing that by indoctrinating, programming, hitting them with fear, they've already had a gnarly childhood, they're already, you know, cesarean C-section, they're already, you know, circumcised, they've already been put through 10 million rounds of trauma. What are you expecting? You're expecting people to be living free and conscious today as adults? Of course not.
You know what the word thug life meant by Tupac,
the hate you give
right?
infants in life fucks everyone.
Little infants fucks everyone.
Right.
About birth trauma. It was a whole statement about birth trauma.
That's it. That's exactly right. That's, dude, oh. Yeah, I mean, if there's any impact I'm going to have on the world, I think this is like one of the main topics. And I'm actually going to be interviewing my best friend. His name is Jason Doig. He was a pro hockey player, played for New York Rangers, played for all the hockey teams, completely had a life redo, met me about 7-8 years ago. He's a hardcore burner. He's an activist. He's got 4 kids. He just had a new baby as a conscious light being. And I've been watching him through the entire birthing process. They got a big, beautiful spot in Ibiza. They're out in the middle of, in Spain. And it was a completely different process this time around. He's completely connected. I mean, they did it with the doulas. They did it in the dark water. I mean, the whole thing, but just intentionally was there. And now he's completely, magnetized by the creationary aspect of the love. And so I'm FaceTiming him a lot, and he has his little boy who's born on April 27th. And he's telling me he's connected to the heart of this baby. And the heart is what's healing him. And that the heartbeat is oscillating through his entire existence through a frequency of love beyond anything we could ever imagine through any modern technology or anything. it just that alone, just me being aware of that was healing me of any trauma I had going through standard birth care. You know what I mean? And so it's unbelievable. And so if you're listening to this right now, we can heal ourselves. It's available to us. How do we do that? We have to first reverse engineer what the issue is and what the problems are and look directly at it. And that's a medicine journey. That's a meditation. That's discipline. That's getting your health right. All of those things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the breath work. So if you do have children who seem to have accumulated birth trauma, the best way to address it is to address your own, because there's no way that they would have accumulated their birth trauma if the parents didn't have birth trauma as well. And there's a psychic link between the parents and the children. And if you can address your own birth trauma through rebirthing breath work, Wim Hof breathing, through Qigong, through yoga, through plant medicine, you'll be able to, you'll notice your children start to let go of things that seem to be hindrances prior. You know, me and my lady, we gave birth here at home 2.5 years ago, unattended, and just used the breath work. That was our main practice,
Beautiful.
rebirthing breath work and hypnobirthing. And it was just another one of those experiences that the more children that are born with free from trauma or with less trauma, the more of us are able to tap into that experience now as adults and clear our trauma, and the more chance we have to bring all children into the world with no trauma, and that gives children a clean slate without all the programming on their mind that this world is a harsh place, that there's microorganisms out to get me, that I'm going to be attacked by this or that. Those pre-verbal programs that get lodged in the body by a little baby who's experiencing these types of things upon birth, and we can prevent that. And so I give thanks that for those mothers that you're working with, and for this for your friend that you were just talking about, because these are ripples and reverberations.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was beautifully said. And the gnosis that, you know, we are these dynamic beings, that I think that's where it's at. It's we've forgotten what we've forgotten. You know, we've forgotten the essence of what it means to be a human being, and how much magic comes with that, and how diversified our own inner ecology and terrain and energies are. We operate on such a high frequency level that we absorb and ascertain everything, especially in the womb, especially, you know, as a child. You know, the construct and design of a child is to memorize and experience and to love everything that's around their entire existence. So if the parent is operating at a certain level, the child's going to operate at that level. They're magnets to you. They magnetize and absorb like sponges. And it hurts me sometimes when I go in public and you see some parents the way they are with their kids. And it's tough. It's tough to see that, you know, and a child will never develop and learn empathy if they're, you know, pushed away, shunned, given an iPad to occupy time, not being in a place of communication and experience, not, you know, always being in a place of being disciplined and not shown what, you know, how to solve the issue on their side. That takes me again back to Waldorf. It's, you know, two kids are fighting, you're not supposed to penalize them. You're supposed to let them sort through it. That's how they develop empathy. And just think about it. I mean, we went through the 60s and the 70s. We had basically Woodstock. We had the psychedelic revolution during really tough combative times. I mean, we were just post World War II, and we're entering another fabricated war, Vietnam. Humanity in this country was like, had enough of this. You know, it's like enough's enough. And then from there, they connected on the spirit of plant medicine. And, you know, what did the government do? They immediately made all those Schedule I drugs and immediately turned on the production of alcohol to the highest level ever. And then they brought in cocaine. And
big pharma.
Big pharma. And it's what happened, what ensued right after all that? You had the 1980s. And the 80s was the epitome of Wall Street, the epitome of, you know, drugs and all different types of fornications, and it was it was a nightmare upon the earth. I mean, you had corporations that are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, destroying everything in nature. I mean, there was no regulatory on anything. It was just money, glam, glitz, ego, and so right now we got the baby boomers, we got generations of people right now that have never developed empathy, that don't even understand what empathy means, that are living in a poverty conscious and a scarcity conscious and a pain conscious. And so we have to be aware of that. So if you're listening to this live right now, you know, these are the things that need to be part of your meditation. So, you know, this is how we can start to operate with ease and grace, is understanding the culture that we're in. And it's not a matter of just looking at those people as crazy or the enemy. Have, you know, just like Jesus said, love thy enemy, right? There's a reason behind that. You know, we have to look deep into what that means. If we can have empathy for the evildoers, and we want to call them the evildoers, then our energy biofield and power goes to the next level. That's what it's all about.
And
you know?
and theirs can go to the next level as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we can encourage that.
Bring them along with us.
Totally. Yeah, bring them in love.
The hate is going to make them go away, but no one can resist authentic love, and that's the reason that they were the evildoers or the enemies in the first place.
Yeah,
because they were seeking out more love.
It's really what it is. It's basically they're abandoned psychologically and emotionally and spiritually. If you're abandoned psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, that means you're completely at a place where you have to fight for it, right? And you have to fight for attention. You have to fight for love. You have to fight for these things because it's been stripped from you at such an early age, and you weren't able to build those roots within you. Just like a tree has to, you know, like a Dawn redwood tree. These are redwoods that me and my cousin Avocado, we go and meditate with all the time in the Pacific Northwest. These are massive, massive, beautiful entities that bring so much joy and love into our ecology and into our world. Those massive trees, they would not be standing if they're not rooted, right? They'll topple. Same thing with the human consciousness and the human spirit. If we are not rooted into who we are, why we are, where we are, and the connection we have to what our thought is, we're living toppled. And when we're toppled, we're living out of fear. And that again starts going back into the mechanistic world of, you know, numbing yourself out with television, numbing yourself out with state-sponsored drugs, numbing yourself out with food, you know, numbing yourself out with things that have no relevance to this world. You know, or, you know, let's talk about duality and living in the Trinity. I love sports. I grew up playing sports. I go to Laker games. I have people in the spiritual community that chastise me because I go to Laker games. Then I have people in the material world that how do you go live in the jungles of Peru
Right.
barefoot for a month with an ayahuascadero and going deeper into the unknown territories of the mind and heart? It's like you're not going to please everybody out there. And my answer to that is, who gives a fuck? Do you, but be present in your thought. Have intention with what you do. Don't be living in fear, and don't let anyone else's Maya incorporate your entire existence.
Yeah,
Oh,
stop shoulding on people. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Shouldn't, always should and shouldn't. It's like, what that got to do with anything? You know what I'm saying? That people telling someone you should do something and shouldn't do something isn't gonna stop them. That people gonna do what they finna do. To lead by example. You know what I'm saying? Set the example. That's it. Get to the root. Cut the root. And that's where the root is. The root is at the mind. So that's what we got to cut if we want to cut off the giving energy to things that don't support us.
right. And that's getting real with yourself, and really just staring at yourself in the mirror, and maybe putting it down on paper. What's controlling you? What's guiding you? Why are you having these daily emotions? Why do you have judgment? And actually doing the work, having the discipline to fundamentally alchemize your thought process. It's so easy to just look at Instagram memes and write a heart emoji. What about really like looking at some of the things that people write, including you, including myself, and tangibly putting that down on paper and taking notes? After some of my lives, now I'm getting probably at least 100 people after every live sending me their notes. It's part of their alchemy to show me that they're tangibly doing the work. And I have so much respect for that.
Yeah.
We're still in a material world. So there's fundamentals, and again, a lot of the spiritual community, I hate keep talking about the spiritual community, but a lot of the spiritual community, they just want to cuddle puddle, they just want to burn sage, they just want to like go to a sound bath, they want to, do these certain things, they don't want to do the work, and they don't want to look at the masters that were here before us. I find that so disrespectful. I really do. And again, this is my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The inner wisdom is within us, of course, but we are the bloodlines of our forefathers, and we come from powerful, powerful, powerful energies. And if you want to be talking this game, if you want to be going further, look, if you don't give a shit about any of this stuff, I'm more power to you. You know what I mean? Like it makes no difference to me. But embody your truth. Live in your truth. If you want to talk the talk, walk it on all levels. I need you. We need you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's we all essential parts of this. That's how we build this heaven on earth and do
right.
great work by everyone bringing what they got individually to the table.
Absolutely. That's synergy. That's like the definition of synergy. It's not me and you equals two. It's me and you equals absolute limitless infiniteness, nonstop. And it's unbelievable what we can achieve and what we can experience here. I'm so honored. I'm so honored, brother. Yeah. And so I want to end it with this. Everything and anything that we talk about is our perspective. We are just messengers, as we have had many messengers in our life, and will continue to do so. I'll continue to be a student my entire life. I do not pronounce myself to be a master. My inner gnosis and my controlled ego knows what I am. But I am only governed by that I believe in. And anything that you hear me talk about, anything that you hear me say, just take